looking down and like all these.
And the thing is, I just took it off.
Yeah. Yeah, right. Walking door to door. Making sure everybody's okay. If you have any questions.
Every Monday nights. Yeah.
And until we have everybody who lives in the city on a device, it's like the immediate. We're gonna have to have some
Yeah.
communication, but thank you for doing that. That was awesome.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. Oh, no Kiana tonight? Oh, no. What's that? Okay, we'll just say a little prayer for Kiana's mom. Is she local, her mom? Hi, Chris. You know what? I have my mask. I'm gonna. Are you sure? We'll keep this. I won't breathe on you.
All set, Scott? What time is it? Hi, Don. 5 o'clock.
Surprise with it. Is everyone's chair gonna dip at the same time? I'm always surprised, so whatever.
Don't be doing some practical jokes.
It's kind of like being back in kindergarten again. Be nice to the teacher, Esto. Hey, we have to, we've got to put together the thing for Edison. Did you ever talk to the folks?
The 30th.
We're having a meeting? Or,
All right, well, very nice to see all of my friends here. And I want to welcome everybody to the Committee of the Whole meeting for the Kalamazoo City Commission for Monday, March 21st. Clerk Borling, will you please call the roll?
Commissioner Decker. Commissioner Hess. Commissioner Hoffman.
present?
Commissioner Juarez.
I'm here.
Commissioner Pradle.
Present.
Vice Mayor Cooney.
Present.
Mayor Anderson.
Here. May I please have a motion to excuse Commissioner Decker from the meeting this evening? Motion made by Commissioner Hess,
Second.
supported by Commissioner Hoffman. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Thank you. City Manager Ritzma, Communications.
Nothing, Your Honor.
Thank you, Manager Ritzma. Now is the opportunity for public comments for the Committee of the Whole meeting. Public comments for this meeting, you can please come forward to the podium. You will have 2 minutes, the Committee of the Whole. Please state your name and whether you live in the city. And I think at this point, Deputy, is there someone who's going to come forward? All right, yes.
I live at 222 North Kalamazoo Mall, and we've been in touch with Jeff Chamberlain, my wife Linda Lesniak and I trust that he's gotten our letter to you. If that's the case, then this could be very quick. Just wanted to let you know that we very much, first of all, thank you for working with the city and county police, the The mall has been much more livable and safer over the last year and a half. I thank you for what you've done for that. We are noticing, however, as the weather gets warmer, it becomes an issue again. And very briefly, we are concerned not only for ourselves, but also for those who don't have homes that are there on the mall, and that becomes their community space. With that in mind, we are hoping that you will work to put in some regulations for the mall. There are essentially 3 things that we encourage you to do. Pass some kind of regulation that says there is no overnight sleeping on the mall, even on the grass. Number 2, any material or bags that are left unattended, we would hope could be moved to some storage place that the city has. That way, if somebody comes looking for it, they could find it at a various place. And the third, of course, is litter. We thank the ambassadors for their cleaning up, but that also needs to be something that is enforced. We very much would appreciate if those were on the books. What we found is that the police are being told by those that sleep overnight that they can't kick them out because they're sleeping on the grass. So that's very simply what we are talking. I see I'm getting very close to the end. Last sentence. Look at the place down as a public space, which in all of the city parks, city's parks / public place. And then include the mall as that, and look at the regulations that are there. I very much appreciate your time, and I think that's it for me. Is that it?
Yes, thank you very much. Is there anyone else in the chambers who would like to take advantage of public comment time for the Committee of the Whole meeting? Deputy City Manager Chamberlain, do we have anyone who's called in for public comments?
I'll go ahead and check. And we'll give it a bit. There's sometimes a lag. We do not have anybody, sir.
Thank you, DCM Chamberlain. No special agenda items, so we are to the work session of our Committee of the Whole meeting. Manager Ritzma.
Thank you, Mayor. Tonight, we're going to review and look ahead for what's in store for the Foundation for Excellence. So we have our Foundation for Excellence manager, Steve Brown, and he's going to walk us through what's next. Steve?
Welcome, Mr. Brown. Good to see you.
Good evening, Mayor Anderson, Vice Mayor, and Commissioners. For people at home, I'm the Foundation for Excellence Manager, Steve Brown, and I'm here this evening to present a brief update and look ahead to autumn 2022 presentations from FFE-funded projects. As a brief background for viewers, the FFE was created in 2017 to support the city's general fund budget, lower property taxes for all city payers, and support aspirational projects. The way that this FFE works, as you can see from the chart on the slide, is that gifts of all sizes can be invested in the permanent endowment of the FFE, and that the interest from that investment will be granted each year to the city in support of its needs. Aspirational projects specifically must fulfill the work of Imagine Kalamazoo's award-winning vision, and they include diverse programs ranging from youth career readiness and small business supports to creation of affordable housing. By the end of this budget year, the FFE investments in Kalamazoo will have exceeded $150 million. Now, the reason I'm here this evening is to just offer a look ahead to autumn progress presentations that staff are working on. We're preparing these for Committee of the Whole meetings for the entire community to show the impact and importance of the work through the goal areas of Imagine Kalamazoo. You'll see on the screen here the topics that are scheduled to be covered are Shared Prosperity Kalamazoo. That includes grants made to date and the two-generational approach that underlies those grants. Youth development updates, so those will include the 3 summer youth programs that FFE funds. Those are Super Rec, All Things Possible, and the My City Summer Youth Employment. Updates about economic development. We'll be together with a community investment team there from Community Planning and Economic Development. And that covers the 10 programs from small business loans and grants to technical assistance for entrepreneurs in the community. Affordable housing updates will build on excellent presentations made by staff, including Director Kick earlier this spring, to report on the 13 affordable housing programs that FFE funds through the city. And finally, great neighborhoods and infrastructure. And so those are updates on parks, sidewalk repairs, and things like tree planting and other infrastructure investments. So the specific format of the presentations is very simple, but what it does is it aims to share a more focused information with the City Commission and community using a standardized approach. These presentations can kind of show the bigger picture of each goal and how individual projects fit within those goals to have impact for citizens in the community. By inviting members of boards and commissions as well as the public, and then also testimonials from people who've been impacted by these programs, we can really have a more kind of efficient use of everyone's time and make sure that we're sharing in a sense, a state of the city, a state of the goal for each of these areas together at these public meetings. So the underlying basis for the presentation is maybe worth lingering on for a moment. It's the fundamental improvements that we've made together as staff for FFE processes at the city. So together with grant specialist Carrie Lynn Williams, it deserves a shout out to her. She's a very valuable member of the city management team. We've invested in better processes and relationships with program leads and departments, not just in more paperwork for those people in the departments, right? We want to be using some trust-based grant-making approaches so that we're involved in the work as opposed to just sort of overseeing it. So what that involves is we start the annual setup meetings with departments. We work together to define the summary of the work, the history of the work, any total budget questions there may be from carry forward revenue from previous years. We go through program details, and then we establish right at the beginning of the year the regular meeting schedule that we have to track progress and offer supports as needed for departments. There's a really unbelievable breadth of work that happens in departments. There's no apples to apples for anything, whether it's a summer youth employment program or an investment in affordable housing or an economic development program. So we really want to make sure that departments have that extra support that they may or may not need from us as FFE staff. And then we have a year-end reflection. That's a very important point. We're not asking for people to complete paperwork and just send it to us. Paperwork that they may struggle with, stories that they may not know how to frame. We'll sit down with them as we have throughout the year, and we actually take the records. And it's just, for anyone who's been involved in nonprofit management or any kind of grant making, the insights are a whole other level where you really see what people struggled with, what they were able to do, what they weren't able to do and why, and then to kind of fold those improvements into programming for each next year. Because of the strong underlying work supporting the 50 current FFE funded projects approved in 2022 and then those still active projects from 2021, we're now tracking a minimum of 1 and a maximum of 3 outputs and outcomes for each project. So together we right now have 100 outputs and 64 outcomes being tracked. And these are for FFE funded projects. As a reminder, outputs measure material aspects of a project or program, such as attendees served or housing units built. Outcomes measure changes in attitude, knowledge, or condition. So examples of this from our own programming are an increase in program participants' income, or an increase in their preparedness for homeownership, or a change in condition from unhoused to housed. The city is watching these processes for potential adoption more broadly across different programs and projects. So here you'll see the committee of the whole schedule that it's proposed, and it'll be announced later in the year. So we intend to reach out specifically to city boards and commissions as well as interested partners and local orgs to view each presentation so that, as I said before, we have kind of a shared moment looking at these major topics in the city. These meetings will also be archived online, so they're broadcast live and then streamed, and then they're available for other people, so we can always point back to that presentation. And in specific, one of the aspects that we're looking for from these presentations is to establish essentially the challenge that was identified first and foremost. So what was in the community that could be improved or needed improvement? Okay, how did you assess that? Who did it affect? Why did it affect them? When did it affect them? How, etc. And then we can say, what was the proposed solution? How did you come about that? With what engagement in the community? And then what are you doing? And again, who, what, where, when, why, how much? And so we can kind of go through for something like housing where there's numerous programs, we can go through broadly those outputs and outcomes and then highlight maybe one or two projects more in detail that has a story and a testimonial behind it, just for sake of time as well as bandwidth. It's difficult to take in, you know, dozens of programs as we've learned over these past few years. So that's the approach to the presentations themselves. And next slide. So finally, I could draw people's attention to where we are today. We have, of course, our website link through the city's website as before, but we've also launched it with a new address, and so that's kalamazooFFE.org. So Kalamazoo FFE for Foundation for Excellence.org. And it's updated, just much easier to use. It's more mobile friendly. You can access information really with one click for news. You can link through to the Imagine Kalamazoo website. And then I've got two screenshots up here, which you can access again with more or less one click from that website. On the left is the investment dashboard showing investment by goal area, year, and neighborhood, and that's fully interactive. And then on the right is a screenshot of the newsletter, which is also available there and was mailed in December to about 30,000 addresses in the city. Again, that's part of the city's transparency and communication initiative to make sure that people know what's going on at the city and that they can kind of follow along with us. So, lastly, I appreciate your time. This was a relatively brief presentation, but it does just kind of set us up for the fall, so that as you're thinking through this year, you'll know that we have planned presentations for Shared Prosperity Kalamazoo, for affordable housing, for economic development, for infrastructure. And this, from an FFE standpoint, leads up to our required budget approval timeline, which is always the end of October. So as we prepare those draft budgets again this year, and we show them to the FFE board, we show them to the commission, and then we ask for approval from the FFE board. We've had a series of opportunities for everybody to be on the same page with that information, so that we're moving ahead really informed of what came in the past, why we were doing that, and then how that's kind of stepping us forward into the future with programs. So at this time, I'd be happy to answer any questions that commissioners have.
Questions, Commission? I don't see any. Right. Commissioner Pradle, do you have? Everyone wants to be last. Okay. All right, Commissioner Hess. No.
Hello? Oh, now I'm on. So Steve, thank you for doing what you do with the FFE. And given that tonight we are going to vote on the reappointments and appointments to the Board of Directors, can you speak to, talk a little bit about the role of the board in these issues and the scope of what it will be doing throughout the year, when we meet, or when they meet, and when and what you're going to be doing and how we approve these particular projects.
Thank you, Commissioner. Happy to speak to that. It's a great series of questions. So maybe I focus on what's different this year. And we've been working since 2017 when the FFE was incorporated to build out the backbone of the foundation, get its policies put into place, and really each year go through that budget cycle with the city, acknowledging that we wanted to build a track record of the proven ability to make the decisions aligned with Imagine Kalamazoo, to put the budget together, to then fulfill that promise to the community through those projects, and then of course go through the independent accounting and all the other pieces that are required in the bylaws for year-end financial transparency. You have a new foundation that will eventually be $500 million, and it's a very significant organization in the community. You have the city, which is a large entity in and of itself, and just making sure that those two significant organizations come together really seamlessly. What makes this year special is that we'll be pivoting for the first time next year, so in the 2023 budget cycle, to receiving a grant from the endowment for the first time. So that's a significant step where we want to make sure the board is on the same page regarding policy, has the full awareness they need to of their roles as stewards of the foundation as an organization and as an endowment asset, and that they are prepared through these meetings to really get the information they need from staff and, just from the community and from kind of feedback from the programs in general, and that they can make those decisions in a really informed way. We have 3 required meetings each year and then a work session, so those meetings are April, August, and October. We're coming up on our annual meeting when the new board appointments will be made by the board itself. Officer elections are at that time as well. And that's just a really important moment because we kind of re-galvanize as a board, who's doing what role sharing do we have, and kind of learning from those who have been on the board for a few terms, those who are just coming in. It's set up so that a third of the board should cycle out each year. That's the way that the bylaws were written. So it keeps kind of a fresh opportunity for our, some people have called it a grassroots board, but it's ultimately a community board. Anybody can apply openly, to keep that kind of fresh perspective coming through. And so I'm looking forward to joining the new team in April when we have everybody approved. And to your point specifically of what decisions will be made this year, we will be, of course, looking at the budget again this fall and approving that. And then for the first time, we'll be approving that endowment grant to the city. And that gets determined through the budget process, so that's still, months down the road. But you'll see me again this fall at the latest for these pieces of information. Thanks.
Commissioner Pradel?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just had a couple questions for you, Steve, if you don't mind. Well, first of all, I just wanted to say the website's awesome. It's really helpful to drill things down by neighborhood. I had one resident from Oakwood reach out and was absolutely convinced that there was no FFE benefit in the Oakwood neighborhood. And so I sent her the link to the website, showed her how much she was saving on property tax and everything. So it was a really good kind of evidentiary tool to share with residents. So I thought I'd share that. You mentioned the newsletter going out to about 30,000 addresses. Do those go to like rental properties, local businesses, those sort of things? Does it go beyond just?
The list is for occupied residences. And then beyond that, we do send out to partners and we try to get them out kind of in packets to people. I think next year what we could probably do is just a titch more outreach, kind of with waiting rooms in mind, right? So those public kind of interchange spaces where people can sit and linger with them a bit more, yeah.
Another question I've had for you, you've been at this for a little while now that it's been about 4 or 5 years, but do you get any sense in terms of the pulse from the community about understanding of what the FFE and how it's connected to the city of Kalamazoo? Once in a while I'll encounter somebody who doesn't really recognize, they'll see and recognize that the Foundation for Excellence is used, but they're still not connecting it quite to the city. And I'm just kind of curious from your perspective, what are your thoughts on that? And do you think that's improving? I know you guys are doing a lot of outreach events with booths and whatnot, but I'm just curious of your thoughts on that as well.
Yeah, it's an interesting kind of the question that we just always have to ask is how do we keep spreading the word? And an interesting data point is from the community survey we do, which is the primary statistically significant one with I believe it's the National Resource Council. And we grew from something like 40% to over 60% answering the question, have you heard of the FFE? And then there was a similar rise in the second question of, have you had an involvement with the FFE? And that's a very good thing to track just because it's kind of a base level awareness of, what is it? The actual mechanism of how it works in tandem with the city, we just try to kind of improve every year. It sounds like a very small thing, but the graphic you saw up on screen here, I can bring it back up, is in this newsletter, and it actually has a very prominent place on the website because we realize that it's a relatively simple idea and relationship, but there's a few pieces to it, and there's a couple of sort of brand pieces. You've got the city, you've got Imagine Kalamazoo, you've got the FFE, and for anybody who's busy, it's just a lot to track, right? That's not going to be top of mind. So even something like this is a step forward to show those two organizations, and then the plan top that working together. And yeah, we've got the ambassador program that we started with the board last year. Commissioner Hess, Director Hess was and I think will remain this year a very friendly face at some of our outreach in the community. And so we keep at it, and I think it's just a fundamental thing of, FFE helps the city realizes the community's vision. That's essentially the shortest relationship we can make. So, the city listened to the residents, we've got the plan, the FFE funds that plan is another way to say it. And we just kind of have to keep revisiting that and make sure that the word gets out.
Do you, now that you've had some time to, have a few newsletters that are mailed out widely and the website and those outreach events, are there any things that you're envisioning as things you'd like to see as enhanced communication things in the future, or things you might want to try, or?
Yeah, there's a fair number of things we'd like to try. It's really a matter of, I think, at that point, the communication staff, how they bring it all together. We do know that by far the preferred method of receiving information from the city is in physical direct mail. That sounds a little anachronistic or sounds old-fashioned, but I think it was 75% of people preferred that. And it's understandable why. I mean, it's effortless. It comes to you. It's a thoughtful product. It's been prepared, right? It's much more comprehensive than anything else, and it can kind of dive in. And then what I like about it too is just from an accountability standpoint, nobody can take it away from you. It's on your kitchen table, and you can kind of come back and say, well, didn't you say you were going to fix that park? And there's a lot of real world stuff that happens that can, and I'm not picking on parks, by the way, of course, but there's real world stuff that can interrupt a program. But it's good to come back and say, we did set this as a goal for ourselves. Have we fulfilled it? And that's just part of that quality and accountability cycle. So.
I just had one other question for you. As we go along as well, there's some programs that seem to be multi-year funded. There's obviously some that are like one and done, one-time funded projects and whatnot. How does that, how do you see that as going forward? Like, striking that balance between things that are ongoing programs and like one-time funded type activities or initiatives?
Excellent question. And to get specific further is so that you'd say you have a one-time capital project. We'll just say build a particular building. Well, just something we don't really do, but just build a building. Then the other would be a program which could repeat every year. It's like a summer youth program. Or another could be something that is intended to just kind of go on indefinitely. And so even in all those cases, where we are with the city process now is that they come as a special request through the budget process. So your super rec, your all things possible, those still come every year for scoring to understand them in context. And that's for a couple reasons, but primarily it's so that we have kind of transparency across all the projects, but also that things can change and quality can change and delivery can change and situations can change and the relative importance of things in a scoring system can change. And that's just to name a few. And so to have everything coming in and not have a special category of kind of multi-year entitlement is important, at least in the way that we've been thinking about it so far. But of course, systems are made to respond and create good outcomes, right? So it's not as though this should be set in stone and justify itself necessarily. Yeah.
The reason I was just thinking about this when I was thinking about the presentation today is I was thinking as you have things, even though they come up through the budget process every year, like you mentioned, like super rec or something, you think to yourself over the course of like say 25 years, eventually if there's a lot of programs that you want to bring back every year, there leaves less and less of the pie potentially for one-time funded projects. And I was just wondering if there's any thought in potentially like reserving or designating a certain amount that is restricted for one-time type projects as you go down the road, so that you might not potentially run into the issue of 10, 20, 30 years down the road, potentially have like vouched for all the funding, if that makes any sense.
It's a sensitive question in the way that you ask it, and I appreciate, and we've thought about it, but we haven't essentially reached that point yet where it's a material question necessarily, because those legacy projects are not eating up the capacity for other new innovations, as it were. But it's something that's definitely on our, if you will, laundry list of to-dos, and when we reach it, there's very good precedent of how other organizations have handled that. Sort of any situation where you have a finite amount of money and a larger number of requests, people have had to deal with that, and we do that with our own city budget. So there will be a time when we come to it, and that may be a little bit sooner rather than later. But at the moment, we haven't had to budget in that particular way. So.
Thank you, Commissioner Praedel. Other questions for Manager Brown? I was just going to ask just a couple quick things here. I know the city is going through a process to revamp our own city website, working on that. But is this work already done for the FFE website then, and it will just be linked, or is there anything that will be happening in terms of a parallel process related to that?
Yeah, so they're of a piece, and for lack of a better way to describe it, each kind of department is its own page. So the FFE, if you look at it as one discrete kind of system of pages, was just done first. We're relatively straightforward. Our website was already, really up to date because it was the last piece of the former website to be made. So it was sort of the easiest one to start with. And we had just done our logo, of course, last year, so it was all a little bit fresh. And so we got that rolled out, and now the website is, I can't unfortunately speak and don't want to get ahead of anybody to kind of the timeline on that, but it's progressing quite quickly, and so I think our communication staff is moving through department by department, process by process, and getting that ready. So it's all of a piece, it's all the same platform, and it'll be very exciting when it is rolled out, because I think it's just I know it's a huge leap forward, absolutely. So.
Right. Yeah, I appreciate that. I know, and you've really already answered this, but I think there was a recent article in a local news outlet that suggested that, at least from an individual's perspective who was quoted, that people don't know how FFE money is being spent. It's not transparent, that sort of thing. And I know it must be a little challenging being on that communication side and feeling like we're doing everything we can and still hearing that kind of feedback. So I guess from your perspective, if there was anything that commission could do to help with that communication piece, to help people understand what information is there and how can that sense of transparency be achieved in terms of looking for things, anything we could do that would be helpful along those lines?
Thank you for asking. There's a short answer and a long answer. So the FFE spends all of its money to the city in a grant each year. So that's very, very straightforward. The FFE dollars then at the city are actualized or kind of put out on the street through its budget the same way tax dollars are, federal grant dollars are, state grant dollars are, private grant dollars are. So those processes are all the same. Just because there was so much emphasis on FFE and such a need to sort of prove our systems and our commitment to the community, we have made the tools like the investment map, which is available for anybody to look at. And then we do, of course, have the newsletter. So the short answer is the more familiar commissioners are with the budget and the more fluent you are in speaking about what gets spent, why, and where, I think that helps everybody, and it really demystifies the process. And just creates a sense of kind of confidence for yourselves and then for the community as well. But for FFE, yeah, we've got the special investment map tool. And I probably have a box for each one of you of our newsletter, which you can keep in the trunks of your car or at your places of business, or you can divide them as needed and hand them out really to anybody who'll take them, because they're just great assets to have out there from a standpoint of building awareness, showing our logo, showing the relationship, showing the specific projects, and then also containing testimonials from people who are impacted. So,
thanks, Mr. Brown. Any other questions?
Yeah.
Yeah, Vice Mayor Cooney.
Steve, thanks for great work you're doing. It's really great. $150 million already is going out the door. That's just terrific. I'm wondering about those articles that appeared in Time magazine. Did we answer them, or is it too late to answer them? Should we answer them? What do you think about that?
So the article appeared, I believe, in August. I'd really have to go back and look.
Yeah, probably.
Refresh me if that's, yeah, I think it was about August. Yeah, I believe it was everybody's understanding that it really didn't require an answer. We do our work, right? We're not, our audience isn't a New York magazine. Our audience is the people in Kalamazoo, people who own businesses here, people who would like to own businesses here, people who want to study and move here, people who are trying to build their lives here, who have been here for generations and, had struggles of their own or had very successful lives. But that's Kalamazoo. That's who our audience is, and that's who we work to deliver for every day. So we're going to be here forever, and so I guarantee this will not be the last bad article you see. And from our standpoint, you know, I was interviewed extensively for this and had thought it would take a different tone than it ended up taking. But what I said very clearly to that journalist and have repeated, I don't know how many times since, is you're doing your job by asking these questions, and I appreciate you for doing it. So here's what a problem will look like, is if you come back and you see the Imagine Kalamazoo plan, and our work doesn't map exactly onto that, then you hold us accountable. That's what the press is for. But you're not going to see that because that's what we're focused on. That's what we do, is Imagine Kalamazoo. So we've got the maps, we show where the dollars are going, we show how it's aligned, and that's just what it's what we stand up behind, that's what we stand up for, so.
So you were interviewed on that. Did they print any of your responses? I don't remember. I didn't think I saw much of a response from you.
Dimly recall a photograph, but I'd have to go back.
They quoted what you said, no. Okay, thank you. That was good.
Just for the record, I was not interviewed, Vice Mayor Cooney. So. Anything else then? Thank you, Commission. Thank you very much, Mr. Brown.
Thank you, Mr.
Appreciate
Mayor.
it.
Thank you, Commissioner.
All your time and work and effort and being with us here tonight. Manager Ritzma.
Yeah, one more item. I'm going to ask that Deputy City Manager Jeff Chamberlain come forward. We want to review with you the strategic calendar coming up for future Committee of the Wholes and business meetings over the next few weeks, months.
All right. Well, good afternoon, everybody. Just to give you a quick preview, for the Committee of the Whole meeting at your April 4th meeting, we'll have a presentation from the YWCA regarding Cradle Kalamazoo. There's like 3 different versions of that. So Cradle Kalamazoo presentation by the YWCA staff. So we'll have that on the April 4th meeting. Also, we want to give you an update that afternoon on where we are with our DEI work, diversity, equity, and inclusion. We have a consultant that's been working with us, and specifically with Director Bonner, and so they'll be available to give us an update on where we are with that process. So that will be kind of a full afternoon then. And then at your second meeting in April, for the Committee of the Whole, we're looking at giving you some updated information about how development works, kind of Development 101. There's just a lot of projects going on here in Kalamazoo, so there's just a lot going on. So again, I think it's really helpful for the Commission to hear from staff as far as how do these processes work, kind of how do staff handle them, and what you can expect to have come before you on some of these development projects. At your business meeting in April, the first meeting, we're going to have a big item for purchasing, and that's our north side lead replacement. So you've heard us talk about that over a number of meetings, budget process, Director Baker talking about water, and this is how the process is working, where we actually bring in a contractor. So that will actually be a multi-million-dollar contract to award that night. So that's the April 4th. And then as we get into May, we're looking at some possibilities of having some opportunities to meet between you and folks at Western Michigan University to just kind of build that linkage and have them give you some orientation between Western Michigan University and the Kalamazoo City Commission. And then as we've been talking about also the sustainability plan that we've been working on through the staff at Community Planning and Economic Development. That draft is about ready to go public. It'll have an opportunity to go to the Planning Commission, public feedback, and then eventually it will come before the City Commission. So right now we're tentatively looking at having that come for a Committee of the Whole meeting to give you kind of a fuller update on that in June. And that way we'll have had an opportunity to also be vetted by the public and Planning Commission, and then finally with the City Commission. So those are kind of the highlights of what we've got coming up. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Questions, Commissioners? Looks like Manager Ritzma's got a question.
Not a question, just a statement. So there's a community benefits agreement work group meeting right now for graphic packaging, and we'll be bringing back the agreement or draft agreement in April. It has to be done by the end of April. So that may be at a COW, or we might have to do it at a regular business meeting, but just add that to your calendar as well.
Thank you, Manager Ritzma. I'm happy to hear that we're working on that. Commissioner Hess.
DCM Chamberlain, with the sustainability plan, is coming to us in June as a committee of the whole?
That
And
is the
then,
plan.
and then when
have
do
here?
we vote on that? When do we vote on that?
Once we go through the finals process, Director Kick, you want to talk a little bit more about the process? I know this is kind of spur of the moment.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. This has been in the works for quite a while, and we're kind of coming to the end.
I know,
Last few steps.
Jamie had been to Environmental Concerns Committee with the draft, and so,
Yeah, so it was.
Hello, Director Kick.
Hi, Mayor,
Nice
Vice
to see
Mayor,
you.
Commissioners. So lovely to see all of you. I was under the impression, so maybe this is a good time to clear that up, that it was a benefit to come to the Cal meeting before the adoption to give a presentation prior to the draft coming and then for public. So it's probably going to feel like you're going to see it a lot, but that was the pathway we're taking, if that's still acceptable. Excellent. More times to see it, more times to get it out in the public, more times for questions and comments and thoughtfulness. So, yes, you're welcome.
Other questions, Commissioner? See not anything else? Manager Ritzma.
Nothing, Your Honor.
Thank you very much. Thank you, DCM Chamberlain. Appreciate that. Now is the time on our agenda for Commissioner comments. Any comments for our Committee of the Whole meeting? All right, seeing none, we are adjourned. I'm sorry, Commissioner Pradel.
Steve, I just want to thank you for your presentation, but I was just going to make a comment about, the FFE and just some of the criticisms and just kind of put out there, my feelings about it. I think in society we ask people who are well-to-do to give back, to do their fair share, and whether that be through taxation or philanthropy or whatever it is, that's what we, demand of people of substance. And, I think with the example of the FFE, that's exactly what people in our community of substance did, and, we don't have the ability to say, hey, we want to, our local billionaires, we want to tax them federally at a different rate than every person else, is taxed. And so, I think this is, exactly what should happen in a civilized society where, the people who are well-to-do step forward and say, we're going to do something significant. And I think it's something to applaud, and, we should show gratitude for the people who made that choice and, made that commitment to our community. I'll add to that as well that I think, my observations with the FFE is it's probably one of the most transparent foundations probably in the country, certainly locally, in terms of what you can see. And that goes beyond just what's vetted and comes through the city, through our, transparency and methods and whatnot as well. So, I just think it's something to be celebrated, and I think we need to talk about the great things that are happening from it and what it's providing this community. Just walking with my kids the other day in Millwood neighborhood where the trees are just completely deteriorating. There's like 300 trees or something like that that were planted last year, and filling all the gaps in the neighborhood. I mean, you walk in areas, you walk in Arcadia, and brand new sidewalks put in. I mean, just all these things that are improving the quality of life in our community. I feel like we could talk, about them forever, and I mean, there's just so many things to be grateful for. So, just wanted to share that.
I appreciate that very much, Commissioner Pradel. Anyone else? All right, well, our regular business meeting starts at 7 o'clock, right back in these chambers. And there's also an opportunity to call in for comments if you want to do that. I believe the number's up on the city website. So for now, we are adjourned, and we'll see each other again in a little bit.